So apparently someone has taken the keys of the car away from Donald Trump. And we're talking about the Fed pick and the economy. And let me show you guys what I mean and what's going on. This is the headlines today. BlackRock's Rick Ryder surges ahead in race to chair Federal Reserve. And if you've been following the story, Rick's name hasn't really been coming up that much. It's been Hassett, Bessent, Walsh, right? These kind of people. Essentially, Trump's looking for a loyalist. And if this guy is indeed the pick, it shows you that Wall Street, the banks, the big money is in control, not Donald Trump. Let me read over the details of this one. We'll talk about this. It says, BlackRock executive Rick Ryder has emerged as the leading contender in the race for Federal Reserve Chair as Donald Trump's decision on who to nominate to lead the world's most important central bank looms, right? Ryder's odds on the prediction site Polymarket have surged from 6% earlier this week to 47%. Like, people bet on this stuff. And so evidently someone's making large bets on this thing. And it's more than just Polymarket. And I'll show you guys why in a minute here. But he surged to the top. So now the front runners are Rick Ryder, Kevin Warsh, Christopher Waller, and then you got Hassett and Bessent. Hassett and Bessent were kind of people that Trump really wanted, but they're just completely out now. And then it was probably, Warsh or Waller. But then suddenly they got this Rick Ryder guy, and it's just like basically Trump's not in control. Ryder is the chief investment officer of Global Fixed Income. That's over at BlackRock. So this guy would know the bond market. He would know a lot of people. So he's definitely plugged into the system. And what I meant before was like, it's not just someone, placing bets on Polymarket and has inside information likely. It's also Bloomberg reporting this right now. It says, Ryder's market support, Fed plan seen as boon for chair job, right? The market likes us to, well, you can let's say the big money. And when I went through this stuff, it really gives an inside look of what's going on with the Trump people. So we'll take a look at it together. It says, Rick Ryder's Wall Street bona fides and openness to making changes at the Fed have bolstered his candidacy for the central bank's top job. And changes at the Fed is kind of what I'm thinking. What many of these Wall Street people want is like a lot of rollbacks and deregulation to take us at a time to where it was like before the great financial crisis, where all bets are off and no rules. And hey, you know what? Free money and borrowing for everyone, which, to be perfectly frank, I don't want to go back to that world, but I'm thinking that there are different aspects that want that. So there's people who want completely deregulation, or you can make the case there's big money that just wants stability and none of this, like someone who's beholden to Trump, where there's no independence of the Fed. So a couple different facets going on here. More, it says BlackRock executive is seen as looking the part of a central banker. And the reason why you have to put this stuff in there is, for Trump to publicly go out and say, oh, I like this guy or I like that woman, but he's probably pick a guy, because it has been reported before that Trump treats this like a TV show. And if he picks someone to be Fed, he wants them to, like, quote, look the part, like an actor. Seriously. He'll comment about people's hair, their smile, and their age, etc. It's as stupid as it sounds that Trump thinks is a TV show, but that's literally what he does. And he'll have dinner meetings. Oh, I saw that person on Fox News, blah, blah, blah. Trump really wants people, though, that will go on TV and lie for him. But I don't think he's necessarily going to get it as, like, again, this pick hasn't been coming up at all. I'll just read more what it says. It says, Ryder has a myriad of ideas for overhauling the Fed. So that's why I mentioned the pre-great financial crisis stuff, but you never know what could end up being. Also in Ryder's favor, he has never worked at the Fed, okay, unlike the other three finalists for the job, and is viewed as not beholden to the institution. So if they're going for radical changes, and this is where it gets touchy. So, you don't know for sure. This is just coming from Bloomberg. They're kind of signaling and floating this around. And the key line that really caught my attention, I'll read it at the bottom here. It says, executives and investors attending the Davos World Economic Forum this week also privately expressed support for Ryder, right? So remember, everyone's in Davos. All the big money is there. And basically, you're having these conversations. Okay, who do you like for Fed? Who do you like for Fed? And you start to bolster support, and then suddenly this name emerges. So I think that right there was saying that people are, because obviously that's going to be the big, talk behind the scenes. And you remember there was like a crazy dinner party where, because Lutnick's a moron and everyone knows that. No one's going to pretend. They know he's a moron and like Lutnick was insulting Europe and everyone's like out booing him and stuff. And they actually canceled dinner early, canceled dessert, true story. and then the central bank, Europe person walked out. It was just a whole fiasco. So, there's many interests involved here. There's the people, like I said, that just want complete deregulation, everything go to this like crazy, hyper, capitalist kind of system. And there's other people that's like, yeah, I do want that, but I also want some stability. I don't want necessarily someone tweeting nonstop and like rupturing everything because things become uninvestable in the USA, which I'll show you guys in a minute. There's a really interesting story that's related. What does it say? It says, and this is where it gets really interesting. Trump told reporters Thursday he finished interviewing candidates and already has a person in mind without elaborating further. And then they make a statement, until an announcement is made by President Trump, any reporting about the Federal Reserve Chairman nominations process is pointless speculation. So this comes actually really funny because like, when was it? Because someone's going to know, like when someone put a writer's name up there, like, is this before or after, Trump's like made an announcement, oh, I've already decided on someone, right? And it's like, this guy's, because with this stuff, like, and, if you're following this, is like, you're going to know who Trump meets or doesn't. I mean, there's just too many people around. You can't keep stuff secret. And that's what I was saying. I hadn't heard this writer's guy's name brought up until really now, which is sort of the Davos thing. So, hypothetically, like that was the people's, he was getting pushed. We're like, okay, we'll put that dude in. And then Trump's there also. And everyone had like this sort of, huddle effectively. Like, hey, this is the pick. That's the play we're going to run. And then, Trump makes an announcement. So it's really interesting, the timing of all of this. And you can also win here. One concern about Ryder that has bubbled up in Trump's inner circle, because remember, you have different people. You have the, like, say, just the pure Wall Street, big money type people. And then you have like just Trump's like inner circle of friends or advisors or controllers or handlers, they're going to call it, like the Millers and that kind of stuff. One concern about Ryder that has bubbled up in Trump's inner circle in recent days is about whether he will follow the president's cues to quickly cut interest rates. So from Donald Trump's point of view, he has a very short-term way of thinking. Why? Because, he's trying to get his buddies in for midterms, okay? He's trying to protect himself from getting impeached again. And remember, Trump doesn't, I'll just be frank with you guys, doesn't have much time left. It's very, very obvious. Just when you see the guy that I showed you guys before, there's a video where Trump's like talking about taking the big aspirin and the doctors don't want him to, but he really wants to take the big aspirin. It's like stupid crap. And he talks a lot about end of life kind of stuff. So he doesn't have much time left. So he's just trying to, basically him and his, handlers are trying to throw the kitchen sink at, do everything they possibly can. So that's why you have this accelerated, timeline. But from just a pure economic perspective, you don't want to behave like that. Like, you actually do want to look at real numbers to keep the economy afloat, because there's some real serious concerns that the market has about the Trumps. So let me show you an example. This is really interesting. U.S. investment grade credit spreads reach lowest level in this century, okay? Investor appetite for blue chip debt remains strong despite a choppy week for stocks triggered by Trump's tariff threats. Okay. So basically, when you're putting money somewhere, you want to get a good return. Everyone wants a good return, of course, but you also want safety. So you balance it out, your risk. Now, usually U.S. Treasuries, you consider that pretty safe. If I put my money there, that I can do 30 or whatever and get whatever percentage. I think it might be 4 or 5-ish right now. But when the spread, meaning that, long story short, if I feel like, well, maybe U.S. business or big company, maybe just simplest terms, maybe Apple or, Microsoft or whatever, maybe that is a safer bet to buy their, corporate bonds opposed to buying U.S. government bonds. And then when you get the spread really close here, and there could be a world, theoretically, let's say Trump does some of this craziest crap and, fights back and puts whatever one of his people in somehow. And then no one thinks the Fed is independent anymore. And then people start thinking like, wow, you know what? I think Apple corporate bonds are more safe and more reliable than the U.S. government bonds, treasuries. That would be absolutely bonkers. But there is a world like that, because there is a possibility that Trump's just like, you know what? I'm just going to, print stimulus checks for everyone, and I'm going to go to deficit spending, and we're going to build data centers on the moon and in space like Elon Musk wants. Well, they're not actually going to build them there. They're just going to say they're trying to build them there, and then they'll just blow a bunch of stuff up and lose a bunch of money, and everyone borrows on said that. Like they'll have these grandiose projects that don't get finished. And this is actually something that happens in a place like Vietnam, just for example, or in China, where you have these massively corrupt governments to where they announce these massive projects, and then things don't get finished and money disappears, right, et cetera. And you have a project that theoretically could have been done right, but you pick a bunch of lackeys to take the contract. So these kind of stories, I know a lot of people sleep on, but it matters. It matters when someone says, yo, maybe Apple, corporate bonds are more better than the more safer than the U.S. government. Let me show you guys what else. And this is actually related to all this stuff. This is from CNBC today. A former Trump official wants to build a massive data center in a remote corner of Greenland. Will it work? And basically, it just shows you what their aims are, right? When Trump says, oh, it's all about security and I got to build a golden dome. No. It's about really just keeping the big money at bay and pleasing your handlers. That's what it is. The same way that, the handlers may want a certain kind of person at the Fed, and there's going to be different factions. So whenever we talk about handlers, there's different factions. Like some people, because they're all greedy individuals around Trump, but some people have, more things that they want to do for their family or their state, and other people are like, oh no, I want to do this and my agenda and my donors. And so that's why you see like this crappy administration from Trump, because it's just all greedy. They're not really caring about the country at all. But there's different factions involved. And then you're seeing massive protests today. You can see my last video on that. Please check that out if you haven't already. And then you got this kind of stuff. The Trump administration weighs naval blockade to halt Cuban oil imports. And there was something earlier to where like the Trump people would like to change leadership, basically just, put a puppet government there in Cuba by the end of this year, which is, there's so many things that are crazy. Easy way to describe it is the Trump people are spending a lot of time, energy, and resources on stuff outside the U.S., like say the Cuba thing, that doesn't necessarily benefit the average person's life. And this is why effectively regular people's lives don't improve, because, Trump, this simple example, spends a bunch of money on giving it to basically private prisons with the whole ICE stuff. And it's interesting whenever, you read the Trumpers and the MAGA people say, oh, Chris, you're so dumb. We got to arrest everybody. And it's just like, they get so delusional on that stuff. It's like, okay, great. So given the choice, I guess, should we cut education, cut all funding to, healthcare and hospitals, and just, cut all transportation, all that stuff, and let's just build a bunch of prisons? Is that the economy that you want? And they don't think in that way, because they just watch Fox News all day and say, oh yeah, arrest everyone, arrest the trans people, stupid crap that they say nonstop on Fox. And I try to just talk like real people here on this stuff. I know a lot of people don't care that much about the Fed or the economy and the money stuff, but don't sleep on this stuff, because what ends up happening if the economy completely melts down and people lose faith in the USA, your borrowing costs go up. It's really difficult to get any sort of job whatsoever, because there's no faith. No one would want to invest in the U.S. because it's just completely unstable. No one would want to trade with the U.S. It's completely unstable. And then you look to other countries. It's true, one of the U.S. big sort of, we want to say, hallmarks or control on the world, or how you want to call it, is the U.S. dollar. But Trump could actually kill the dollar if he just puts in people that he wants and just starts printing nonstop. And I'm curious because they're not that specific when they say this guy, has a myriad of new ideas at the Fed, and he's not, locked down by institutional memory, essentially is what they're saying, because he's never been at the Fed, right? Or institutional, guidelines and such. But he is from BlackRock, so I don't think he's going to go that crazy, but you just don't know. And that's why I was mentioning, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want the financial crisis, rules in place. Be it rules for how much money a bank holds when they lend out money, like can you just lend out everything and don't have any cash reserves or whatever. I mean, the stuff really, really matters. I know it's frustrating because I know people don't care about the money stuff, but I tell you anyway, even though it's not popular, because I think it really matters. I always appreciate you watching for those who do care about the money stuff, because don't ignore this stuff. It really matters. So that's my thoughts on this. I do appreciate your time, and I'll catch you all in the next video.